guess what? Did they think that information was never going to get out for the next 200 years? What, he was going to show up to spring training next year and people were going to go, oh, I mean, I guess Rocco's, I guess he's here. But then a little twist to the story is my colleague at The Athletic, Disco Danny Hayes, former and future, maybe future, we'll see. I'm getting, I don't know. I have confidence that he'll be a guest again on the show.
That's right.
But he reported shortly after that, I think that night, that in fact Rocco Baldelli's 2026 team option on his contract has already been picked up for next season.
Right.
And so not only did Derek Falvey give him a vote of confidence, but he's not at this point even a lame duck manager, which is the name people give when you're on an expiring contract. And what's interesting, I thought, about that situation, obviously Dan reported that, and the reaction on Twitter was
measured.
Yeah. Dan said to me, I was sitting next to him as he posted the link on Twitter, I think that night, and he said, I'm gonna do the setting on Twitter where only people who are mentioned can reply. He didn't mention anybody, which means no one can reply. Like I couldn't even reply.
Right.
Just because, I mean, he knew what his mentions were going to look like. Everybody just is furious about everything, particularly the manager of a losing baseball team. What he didn't,
especially a losing baseball team that the last 4 in a row being blown out.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, the timing of that from, I guess, the Twins' perspective was just about as bad as it could be, in that you've now been a month-long funk and news comes out that you picked up the option on your manager. But what I will note is they didn't just pick up that option. It was the timing in terms of when it was reported by Dan,
right,
who did excellent work getting multiple sources to confirm that. I mean, that's his job. He did really well. That's just the timing that Dan found out, was able to confirm it with multiple sources, which is a big part of journalism, and then wrote about it. That doesn't mean they just picked up the option during this horrid stretch. And in fact, there's some indications that this was picked up during a pretty good stretch, perhaps early in the season, or it hasn't been super recently that they picked up the option. Now, the argument I will make here and have made to Twins official or two over the last few days was, I'm not sitting here and saying it's not horrible timing. I mean, it's really bad to your fan base, who's as frustrated as they've been in quite a while, and to learn that the manager's option was picked up for next season. But it's the Twins' own fault. Why not just announce whenever this took place, whether it took place in March, in April, in May, whenever it happened? Why not just as simple as sending out a press release, which, by the way, they do when they claim a guy off waivers.
Right.
They send out a press release. When you sign, Ty France to a non-guaranteed $1 million contract right before spring training, they sent out a press release with, details about that and the money explained and the contract terms explained. It's pretty standard operating procedure for any deal of any sort of significance to a major league team. Now, you might be saying to yourself, well, why do they not do that for, let's say, managers or coaches or general managers or president of baseball operations? Because they're not forced to do that. Because the union and the MLBPA and the collective bargaining agreement force all contractual details to be known. And that's not that the Twins will announce it, but it's widely available information.
Right.
Because players want that information out there. Teams have to abide by it, et cetera, et cetera. Well, there's no such union and there's no such collectively bargained situation for managers or general managers or whatever it is. And so going back to the Gardenhire days, people were kept in the dark in terms of what was the contract. They would occasionally say, oh, by the way, we extended Gardy's contract by 2 years. They would never tell you how much it was. They would never tell you the options.
I feel like the previous regime was more forthcoming in that sort of information or announcements of a lot more than this one. And in fact, I think
neither were forthcoming to the extent that they would be for any player-related transaction.
Right. And I think even right until I want to say 2020, 2021, 2022, something like that, we would get announcements when, Falvey would be extended several years or Baldelli would be extended several years. Those would be news items. Then what we heard, because I remember last year about the second half of the year, we were trying to figure out what Falvey's contract situation was. And the answer was, we made a decision a few years ago that we're not going to announce any kind of contract extensions or any changes in those things during the season. And then apparently Falvey's contract was in fact changed during. I mean, we know he got a new role. Do you have any idea what Falvey's contract? I don't remember an announcement in the offseason.
They didn't announce anything during the offseason. They don't announce this stuff. And in fact, here's how deep it gets. Dan, nobody is, as far as I know, they shouldn't, doubting the accuracy of Dan's report. It's accurate. Trust me. We joke around about Dan, but Dan can report the F out of stuff. And he's not doing it because he heard a rumor. It's accurate. And they refused not only to confirm that for Dan, like on the record, but are giving the same boilerplate statement of we don't comment on this, blah, 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 which, okay, fine. My point there is that's their right to do that. They can choose, similar to the injury situation, they can choose to be forthcoming about stuff, go above and beyond, or they can keep everything close to the vest. I have my opinions on both of those things about whether they're doing themselves a disservice. I think so, but that's their right.
Sure.
However, if you are going to choose to pick up the option on your manager for next season, and you are literally not going to tell anyone, to the point that even when months later, let's say, or however long later, someone reports it, you're not even willing to say it's true at that point publicly. Then guess what? You're at the mercy of whenever that information comes out. It's the exact same thing as the injury thing. If someone gets injured and you refuse to give any sort of timeline or consistent updates, then fans and media members will just try to fill in the blanks as best they can, and you can't really get angry at that. And this whole thing, the bad timing and the uproar and all this stuff, could have been solved by the day they picked up his option. Send out a 2-paragraph press release that just says the Minnesota Twins announced the exercising of manager Rocco Baldelli's 2026 option. The 2019 manager of the year has the 3rd most wins and blah, blah, blah. I mean, I could have written the press release. AI could have written the press release.
That's right.
They chose not to do that. Okay, fine. You chose not to do that. Guess what? Did they think that information was never going to get out for the next 200 years? He was going to show up to spring training next year and people were going to go, oh, I mean, I guess Rocco's, I guess he's here. The information was going to get out at some point, just like the injury stuff gets out at some point. And by choosing not to be the one to manage and put forth that information in a way that they want, it's open season on that. And so I get why it's like, oh, horrible timing. But I did want to make clear the timing. I mean, this has happened not quite a while ago, not like 3 years ago, but it didn't just happen during this most recent bad stretch.
And welcome to the end of this video. There's lots more. For another, just click on one of these boxes.
Or click on this circle in the middle to subscribe to all of our Twins Talk.
Thank you.
Cleveland